Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. Greetings, drowsy spirit. Tonight, I will tell you a story that will help you fall asleep soundly. Remember to subscribe for more bedtime stories and like the video before we start. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in the comments section. I would also love to know what story you would want to hear next. I had no idea that night that I would meet him. To be honest, I wasn't even expected to be present. It was one of those weeks in late February when the cold seemed to hate you on a personal level. Kelsey, my roommate, had pleaded with me to come out. After everything with my ex, she stated I needed to clear my thoughts. I had been living off of ramen, paying my rent late, and browsing job sites as if it were a full-time job. I was taken downtown to a hotel bar by Kelsey, the sort of place where old money and scent mingled. Every man there had the appearance of someone who had just stepped out of a banking commercial, and there was gold lighting and jazz playing in the background. I immediately stood out with my black jeans and coat from the thrift store. She pushed me. Grin, young lady. I attempted to make you look like you're at a funeral. It has the feel of one. After that, have a drink. So I did. He entered at that point. I didn't anticipate him. Not the stereotype of the oily old man. He was tall, clean-shaven, with salt and pepper hair, a good coat, and was possibly in his late 40s. He had a natural, practiced smile. He looked around, ordered whiskey neat, and then I saw him. It was the sort of expression you only see in movies, steady, as if he had a plan in place. Oh my God, Kelsey muttered. He's coming this way. She was correct, but I rolled my eyes. At our table, he paused. Ladies, he remarked in a quiet, low voice. It appears that both of you are attempting to forget something. Kelsey chuckled. Aren't we all? He gave her a smile, but his gaze remained fixed on me. How about you? You appear to be in need of a vacation from your unpleasant days. I gave a shrug. Are you going to give one? He laughed. Perhaps. We spent an hour talking. Reed Calloway was his name. Claimed to have worked in real estate development, which might be interpreted in a variety of ways. He was a nice man who used words carefully and gave the impression that silence was deliberate. He leaned closer as Kelsey went to the restroom. You're unique. In what way? Do you hear me? It nearly made me chuckle. That's a low standard. He grinned once more, and I saw that the warmth in his voice was not entirely reflected in his eyes. I gave him my number when he asked for it. I have no idea why. Perhaps I was sick of refusing. Perhaps I wanted to think that someone could make things better. The following morning, he texted, Tonight's dinner. Reed, my reward. No demands, just delicious food. I spent a lot of time looking at the screen. Wasn't no expectations always a lie? However, the rent was due. There was nothing in my refrigerator. I replied, yes. He drove a black automobile that didn't look clean enough to be on my street when he picked me up. Upon opening the door, he remarked, You look perfect, despite the fact that I had just donned heels from a thrift store and a cheap black dress. Dinner was at a string-lit rooftop restaurant where patrons could place their orders without having to check costs. I made an effort to seem informal, but I kept thinking about how this universe was a long way from mine. He inquired about my background, my studies, and my goals. He rarely discussed himself. He did, but it was ambiguous. Property, business travel, and investments. When the bill finally arrived, he covered it without blinking. Then he turned to face me and said, Allow me to assist you. I understand what it's like to start afresh. I scowled. Please assist me financially. I want to provide you some assistance. We spent time together in return. How much there was is up to you. The actual offer. He spoke as though discussing the weather. Not sleazy, but casual. A card was slid across the table by him. Simply consider it. That evening, I informed Kelsey. She let out a squeal. That's a sugar daddy, girl. You've struck gold. I winced. It's strange. Avoid making it strange. Use him, please. He has company. You receive money. Win-win. I promised myself that I would not. However, I texted my landlord a week later when he sent a final notice under my door. It wasn't horrible at first. He provided me an allowance and took me to good places. At first, he wasn't handsy. Talk, drinks, and dinners only. In a way, he made me feel seen. He asked me one evening whether I would like to spend the weekend at his lake cottage. Out there, it's quiet, he remarked. Just you and me. No phones, no noise. I paused. No cell phones. He grinned. Signals are terrible. In any case, I enjoy unplugging. Yes, I replied. 2 hours out. The lake house was encircled by woods so dense that the sunlight was streaked through. It had the appearance of a postcard. View of motionless Black Lake. Wood deck, large windows. The interior was immaculate. Too immaculate. Not a single picture. Not a dust particle. He played music and poured me champagne. It was virtually quiet for a time. Then you can go, he said. Your luggage at the visitors' quarters. There's a guest room. He gave a nod. Obviously. Unless you want to remain with me. I chuckled uneasily. Guest room's fine. His smile wavered slightly. As you wish. I had trouble sleeping that night. Strange sounds, like faint clicks and cacks, as if it were breathing, came from the house. I woke up at midnight to fetch some water. There was a glimmer from downstairs, but the hallway light was out. Reed was seated in the living room, gazing at the unlit fireplace. He appeared to be lost in thought, as his hands were clenched, and his elbows resting on his knees. Can't sleep either, I muttered. He avoided looking at me. Do you think humans are capable of changing? It was a surprise question. I believe so. Why? At last, he raised his head. He had strange eyes, perhaps unfocused. Most people are unable to. They act as though they can, yet they always revert to their previous state. Abruptly, he stood up. Return to your bed, my love. I went cold. It wasn't tender the way he stated it. It was the last one, similar to a directive. I went. He returned the following morning to typical. Coffee, pancakes, and small conversation. If I slept well, he inquired. I said yes while lying. I took a stroll around the lake after breakfast. There were only woods, no neighbors, and no boats. I saw something partially buried close to the dock's edge. A rusty gold bracelet belonging to a woman. It broke in two as if it had been there 4 years as I picked it up. I took it inside. Reed, hello. Was this dropped? He glanced first at it and then at me. Most likely from before I purchased the property. What time was that? His smile was faint. Long ago. He took the bracelet and put it in his pocket after that. He recommended we see a movie that night. He placed his hand on my knee halfway through. I went cold. He leaned closer. You don't like it. I just wasn't expecting. Calm down, he whispered. This is a safe place for you. His use of the word safe made my stomach turn. I walked upstairs and excused myself. I sent Kelsey a text. Me. Hey, something doesn't feel right. Kelsey. He's behaving strangely. You're all right, girl. Relax. Simply said. Wealthy men are awkward. I wish to trust her. Something woke me up at 3 in the morning. Steady, methodical footsteps heading down the hallway to my room. The doorknob turned once, softly, and then stopped as I sat up, my heart pounding. Reed, I said in a whisper. No answer. I heard the footsteps retreat after a long minute. Even though there was no coverage, I held on to my phone till sunrise. He pretended nothing had happened the following morning. He hummed to himself as he prepared breakfast once more. He grinned when I inquired if he had been up late. He said, I checked on you. You were having a nightmare. I wasn't dozing off. He did not flinch. You were. Then he turned to leave. I mentioned I had to return early that afternoon. He simply grinned and offered to drive me without arguing. He pulled over for gas halfway down the road. I looked for a charger in the glove box while he was inside. I discovered a tiny velvet pouch instead. There was another bracelet inside. This one made of silver rather than gold, and it bore the name Marissa etched on it. I pushed it back and tried to be normal when he returned, but my mind was racing. I looked up Reed Calloway on Google that evening when I got home. No Facebook, no LinkedIn, and no real estate developer's record. However, I did come upon a 6-year-old news article. Near Calloway Lake, a local woman went missing, last spotted with an elderly guy friend. No developments, no arrests. The man was exactly as described. I blocked his number, stopped responding, and attempted to break off communication. Flowers showed up at my door 2 days later. It's simply a note, no card. Don't disregard me, my love. We're not finished. I dropped my hand because it was shaking so much. I should call the police, Kelsey said. Yes, I did. They promised to keep a lookout. But there wasn't much they could do in the absence of criminal evidence. The following week passed quickly. I began to see him everywhere. Unaligned reflections, parked cars that resembled his. The door was unlocked when I got home one evening. Within, except for my bed, everything appeared the same. In the middle was a solitary item, nicely arranged. The same lakeside gold bracelet. I went to stay with Kelsey after packing my luggage, but I couldn't sleep by myself because she worked evenings. I jumped at every creak. I heard something outside the window at about 2 in the morning, gently tapping. I went cold. Then there was a whisper, Emmy's my nom. Then there was a whisper, Emmy's my nom. Unlike most girls, I didn't meet him online. Coffee was the first thing. I was 21 years old, broke, and just graduated from community college at the time. Lung cancer claimed my mother's life the previous winter. I was working double shifts at a cafe named The Beacon and renting a little basement room outside of Nashville. I had a static life. Late nights, early mornings, and the same old chit-chat about overtime and tips. It was a Tuesday afternoon when he arrived. I recall this because I nearly skipped that shift. Trish, my manager, pleaded with me to cover when the dishwasher called out. When he entered, the space was just partially occupied. A well-groomed man in his mid-50s with clean hands, a silver watch, and a pressed shirt. He had the appearance of a preacher or lawyer. He took a seat in my row. He said, "Coffee black," when I approached, like someone who didn't have to raise their voice to be heard. Their voice was deep yet quiet. "You got it," I said, putting it in writing despite how easy it was. He gave me a courteous but cold look when I brought his mug. His eyes were a light blue color and hardly blinked. Unlike most older males, he didn't look at me. No sneer. No remarks about my clothing or hair. "How long have you worked here?" was all he asked. "Little over a year." As if to file that away, he nodded. "You take good care of yourself. These days, you don't see as much." It sounded both like a test and like a compliment. I chuckled uncomfortably. "I suppose that's what you get from rent." He grinned once more. "That's a smart response." That was it. He left a $7 bill ahead of a $20. Just that, no number. No eerie remarks. However, he returned every Tuesday at approximately 300 p.m. always cash, always coffee, and always black. He began to inquire more frequently about my family, my education, and whether I had ever considered relocating to a more tranquil area. I told him about my mother, how I was barely making ends meet, and how the hospital costs had completely destroyed our finances. He paid attention, listened intently. Later, it was peculiar because of that. How serene everything appeared at first. "You shouldn't have to work this hard," he stated one Tuesday. "You're still young. You're worthy of some relaxation." I chuckled. "Tell that to my landlord." He didn't chuckle in return. He just put a clean hundreds on the table after reaching into his wallet. Half jokingly, I asked, "For what?" "For rent." He asked plaintively. "There are no conditions." I went cold. "That's quite lovely, but I'm unable to." His eyes were soft as he cocked his head. "Consider it an act of compassion. Feel free to refer to me as an old-fashioned gentleman." He spoke in a stern but not pushy tone. He did not insist when I told him no. "Just I'll leave it here," he said. "Don't touch it if it annoys you." I kept my hands off of it. I didn't notice anything sitting there till closing. That was the beginning. He was Richard Palmer. He introduced himself, claimed to be a finance professional who lived in Washington, D.C., before relocating to Tennessee in search of serenity. I saw no harm in speaking with him. My co-workers made fun of me by referring to him as my sugar daddy. However, he never went too far. He simply listened, gave me a nice recommendation, and said things that helped me feel heard. He asked me if I wanted to go out to lunch with him one day, so we could avoid fluorescent lights and greasy aprons. I can't, I said. I'll be killed by Trish. I will give you a call and explain, he said with a smile. I chuckled. My lawyer, how are you? No, he muttered. Simply put, I detest seeing decent individuals trapped in unsatisfactory habits. I was struck by that line. I answered yes a week later. The Willow Room was the location he showed me. Soft jazz. White tablecloth is everything pricey yet understated. As if he already knew what I liked, he placed my order. Iced tea and grilled fish. You're polite, he said. You had a good upbringing. I suppose so, I responded. My mother ensured it. He gave a nod. She seems like a powerful lady. She was, I said. Then I added without intending to. She had little faith in men. He gave a small smile. A typical error. I hesitated for a moment at that response, but he appeared composed, almost kind. He remarked after lunch, "You remind me of someone. Perhaps my daughter has matured. Married in the West. You have children." Had. He made a kind correction. "She doesn't speak to me anymore." Why? He peered out the window. People can be nasty out of love. The sacrifices made for them are forgotten. I remained silent since I was at a loss for words. We began to get together frequently. Coffee, rides, and lunches. He would tell me about the past, when people were more disciplined, religious, and organized. "You know what's wrong with this world," he once said. "Everyone desires unstructured freedom. Without order, freedom is decay." He appeared serious, even tearful, but I nodded to keep the talk light. He began presenting me with small presents, such as food, a coat, and a necklace. He would respond, "I'm happy to help," but I tried to say no. Then one day he made a larger offer. He answered, "I have a place out of town, safe and quiet, rent-free. You may remain there till you are able to support yourself." I hesitated because it's an opportunity, not charity. "Richard, that's quite a bit." He grinned. "Now is not the time to make a decision. Simply consider it." For a week I did. The rent rose overnight after my roommate declared she was leaving. I went into a panic. "Then the timing is perfect," he responded when I told him. His home was an hour outside of Nashville, past deserted roads and undulating hills. The driveway led to a white, two-story farmhouse after winding through trees, the sort of place where it seemed like there were rules. I was struck by how quiet the car was as I got out. It's more like absent than peaceful stillness. No hum of life, no birds. Everything was spotless inside. No dust, framed Bible quotations, and polished wood floors. He showed me around. "The guest room is where you'll stay. Upstairs," he said. "I will be present because I work from home, but I keep to myself." It was a simple guest room, a desk, a bed, and a tiny cross over the door. "There's only one rule," he remarked. "Stay out of the basement. That's where I work. It isn't for guests." I gave a nod. "Sure, I'm not nosy," he grinned. "All right, I appreciate that." The initial nights went smoothly. He made breakfast every morning in the same way and kept to himself. Bread, eggs, and black coffee. Before he ate, he prayed in a low, nearly whispery voice. Yet something seemed strange. Around 2 a.m. every night, I could hear him strolling down the corridor. Silence near my door, then by slow, steady footfall. I assumed I was dreaming the first time, but it happened again. "I like to make sure the house is secure," he stated when I questioned him about it. "It's impossible to be too cautious." "You should not lock your door at night," he continued. "It's a bad habit. Creates a sense of division in the home." "I would give it some thought," I answered. I didn't open it. Weeks went by, like humidity before a storm. The tension grew subtly. During breakfast, he would pose odd questions. "Before going to bed, do you pray?" Do you believe that sin is inherited? Do you believe that love is discipline? I dismissed them with a giggle, but his gaze never left mine. I was folding clothes one afternoon when I heard a low, freezer-like mechanical hum coming from downstairs. It was steady, steady. The sound persisted even after I reminded myself to disregard the basement rule. Then, one day, I became curious while he was out running errands. The hefty, ancient wood cellar door was locked, but the lock was brand new and shining. I heard anything other than the hum when I put my ear to it. A subtle cadence, akin to trickling. He arrived home later than normal that evening. There was a slight metallic smell to his clothing. He responded abruptly, "You've been down the hall, haven't you?" I felt sick to my stomach. What? His tone remained steady. "You made contact with the basement door." Something just sounded to me. Imagined a pipe or something. After giving a hesitant nod, he grinned, but it was short-lived. The first seed of disobedience is curiosity. I apologized, "You recall," he said. Nothing was harmed. However, the footsteps were longer and louder that night. He paused at my door and remained motionless for nearly a minute, until I heard him leave. I held my breath. I woke up the following morning to the smell of bleach. He was humming a hymn while sweeping the kitchen floor. "Is everything all right?" I inquired. He replied, "It was just cleaning." "You last night, I spilled something." "No," he responded. "That must have been me." A dark stain caught my attention beneath the mat by the refrigerator. He saw me staring and gave me a small smile. "Housework is not a concern for you. That's my responsibility." He went to town that afternoon. I made the decision to look. I drew the rug back. It was an ancient, brown, uneven stain that wasn't from wine or coffee. I had trouble sleeping that night. From below, the hum felt stronger than before. A tiny creak was heard around 1:43 a.m., followed by the sound of metal clicking. I opened my door and stood up. With the exception of a strip of light leaking from beneath the basement door, the hallway was dark. My heart was racing as I stood there listening. Then there was a movement inside. A gradual, purposeful shadow. I said in a whisper, "Richard." No response. Then footsteps ascended the stairs to the basement. I hurried back to my room, pushed myself up against the door, and shut it. Outside, the steps came to a standstill. A whisper that sounded almost like a prayer then came. "Salvation comes from cleanliness." There was silence after the doorknob turned once and "Salvation comes from cleanliness." There was silence after the doorknob turned once and it was a Wednesday when I met him. It was one of those humid early summer evenings when the sky turns orange and the air smells like rain that never falls, which is why I can still remember it. While waiting for my last load to dry, I was sitting in my car outside a laundry, browsing through my phone. I enjoyed doing laundry here because it was never crowded and kept open late, even though my apartment was roughly 2 miles away. The communication arrived at that point. "Your photos don't do you justice." I initially believed it to be just another scam bot. A few weeks prior, somewhat as a joke, I had created an account on a website called Sweet Match. There, according to my friend Brittany, she met a man who never asked for anything and paid her bills. That's not precisely what I was searching for. I promised myself that I would only talk and flirt. Nothing serious, even though my rent was tight and my auto insurance was past due. Calvin_54 was his username. His picture appeared to be typical. In what appeared to be a hotel conference room, a man with grey hair, clean-shaven, glasses, and a navy suit. The type of man who would give you a smile while standing in line at Starbucks but remain silent. I typed back, "You must need new glasses." Then, he answered almost immediately, "Honest girls appeal to me. Are you able to speak?" I didn't give it much thought. Because I was bored, I said, "Sure." We struck up a conversation. He informed me that he was a Pennsylvania-born engineer who had lately relocated to North Carolina in order to start afresh. He claimed to be childless, divorced for 6 years, and to spend his days renovating an old house outside of town. He spoke in a soothing, even archaic tone. Unlike most guys on those sites, he didn't flirt. He once remarked, Most girls just want Venmo and disappear. I'm trying to find someone who will speak. Genuine friendship. The simple part is the money. It sounded quite innocuous. Over the next few days, we continued our conversation. Nothing extraordinary. He would inquire about my work at the clinic, my mother in Tennessee. I would talk about the trivial stuff, like my car breaking down or the coffee shop close to my flat that always burns the muffins in the morning. He appeared to be sincerely curious. A week later, he said something that confused me. "I see my daughter in you." Before responding, I paused for a moment. "Do you have a daughter?" "You claimed not to have." He returned it. "No more." I was at a loss for words. After remaining for a while, the typing dot vanished. I reminded myself not to worry too much about it. People constantly lose people. Perhaps she died. Perhaps he didn't want to discuss it. I uninstalled the app that evening. However, a note was waiting in my email inbox the following morning. It's from my personal Gmail, not the app. "Calvin, it's me. You vanished. Don't repeat that. I promise that I never provided him my email address." I received a parcel at my door 2 days later. Just my handwritten name, with no return address. There was a message and a little velvet jewelry box inside. A lovely thing should be given to every decent girl. See, a gold bracelet was inside the box. Not inexpensive as well. It had a small etching on the inside that said SD, and it was substantial and weighty. It meant sugar daddy to me. I'm not so sure now. That evening, I gave Brittany a call. "What did he send you?" "A wristband." My address was not even disclosed to him. "That's really weird, girl." Put him on hold. Yes, I did. Then he sent me an email. Block his email as well. "You owe him nothing _" So I did. Everything was blocked, reported, and erased. Nothing happened for a week. Then, one evening after working at the clinic, I returned home to see my apartment door only an inch open. Perhaps I hadn't grasped it correctly, I thought. With my heart racing, I carefully pushed it open. Until I entered the kitchen, everything appeared to be in its proper place. The jewelry was there, on the counter. A few days prior, I had disposed of it in the garbage. That night, I didn't get any sleep. Every creak and refrigerator hum sounded like footsteps. I eventually contacted the police at around 2 in the morning. A young officer arrived, kind, but obviously believing I was exaggerating. After inspecting the property and writing a report, he advised me to upgrade my locks. My phone buzzed in the morning after that. Unknown figure. It was wrong of me to respond. He advised against throwing it away. "Who is this?" "You're aware of who it is. Leave me alone, Calvin, or I'll contact the police." "You did it already." I read the report. "They didn't think you were real." Click. His voice was steady, deep, and serene. It seemed as though he was grinning as he spoke. After that, I spent a couple of nights with Brittany. Despite being smaller, her flat seemed safer in some way, as if the noise deterred him. We even made jokes about it to help us relax. Perhaps he's a phantom sugar daddy, or just an elderly man with too much free time. Venmo transactions from the afterlife. Indeed, we chuckled. It was beneficial for a while. Then my phone buzzed once more one evening. We were watching TV. One more text. "Sweetheart, you don't have to conceal. I am aware of your sleeping quarters." Angrily, Brittany reached for the phone. "We're going to the police once more." But the electricity cut off before she could. Complete darkness. The door was knocked on a second later. It knocked softly and rhythmically, but not slamming. "Remain motionless," Brittany muttered. The knocking ceased. Then, from the opposite direction, we heard a man's voice. "Baby, open the door. Your bracelet is gone." I felt like screaming. Brittany's hands were trembling too much as she reached for her phone. Almost a whisper pressed against the wood. The voice grew softer. "You need not be afraid. I'm not mad, just disappointed." Then nothing. Before Brittany dared to glance through the peephole, we waited for 10 minutes. Whispering, "Nobody's there," she said. When the power returned, we switched on all the lights. One car sat outside by the curb, idled for a second, then moved away. A Lincoln that is black, no plates. I left after that evening. Brittany helped me load up her boyfriend's truck with all I owned. Although it was farther from work, we discovered a new, less expensive location across town. I started over, erased all social media, and changed my phone number. For several months, there was no activity. I nearly persuaded myself that it will end in December. One night I was shutting the clinic. The final patient had departed. I was wrapping up some paperwork when I heard the front door ring. The lights were muted. We were shut down. I apologize. I looked it up. In the doorway stood an elderly man wearing a navy blazer, glasses, and grey hair. He seemed to have been practicing his smile, which was modest but incorrect. "Calvin," he gave a nod. "Sweetheart, it's nice to see you again." I went cold. My throat became parched. "You are unable to be present. To see you, I made the long drive. My messages went unanswered by you." Hoping the alarm would go off, I pressed the panic button beneath the counter. He continued to speak slowly and calmly. "Why you hide is beyond me. For you, I handled everything, even located your new residence. Remember how you moved? But the same couch. How are you? I look out for you." So he stepped forward. Fathers are like that. Something broke inside of me. "You aren't my dad." His smile widened. "Am I not?" Lights flickered before I could react. Each and every one. The clinic's light bulbs are all humming like static. I could hear a high-pitched, piercing hum in my ears. Then there was darkness. The temperature dropped. Dead cold. Not draft cold. Calvin was gone when the backup lights came on. Once more. "It's just the bracelet on the counter." The engraving was different this time. Daddy's house. The following day, I left that job and relocated to a different city. Distance didn't matter. Even though I assumed it would assist, I kept getting the texts. Fresh emails, new numbers. Sometimes they weren't even messages, just sounds of voicemail with breathing and a faint murmur of my name, or a quiet hum through the phone at night. I once discovered muddy footsteps from the front door to the bed inside my flat when I woke up. They came to a stop directly next to me. I contacted the police once more. They looked at the door. No coercion. The way people look at someone they don't believe, but don't want to speak out, is how the officer looked at me. He suggested that you speak with someone, similar to a counselor. It nearly made me chuckle. It was 3 months before anything significant occurred once more. Tyler is a guy I met. Worked in it. Nice and typical. We spent some time dating. He was somewhat aware of Calvin. I had a stalker once, but that's not all. After supper one evening, we returned to my house. Everything was going well. Simple. I nearly forgot I was afraid. Then my phone buzzed at midnight. Unknown figure. Tyler took it from the bedside table. "Do you want me to respond?" He did it before I could say no. "Hi there," he scowled. "Who is this?" Then he became pale. Slowly, he gave me the phone. "You," a muffled voice on the other end said, "is capable of surpassing him." Tyler ended the call. He chuckled uneasily. "Weird prank call. Huh. But that night, he didn't sleep. I didn't either." Tyler failed to arrive to work 2 days later. In the driveway, his roommate discovered his car still running. The gold bracelet was on the passenger seat inside. I repeated everything to the police. After searching for Calvin, they were unable to locate any records of somebody with that name who fit his description. No paper trail, no fingerprints. It was as if the nice match profile had never been there. I was asked by the investigator whether I was certain it wasn't someone I knew who was acting. I replied, "Who was acting?" I replied, "Rent was due." But I never imagined that I would be the type of girl who downloaded one of those sugar daddy applications. I was sick of surviving on cold brew coffee and ramen noodles after my hours at the diner were slashed again. For over a year, Jess and I shared a 2-bedroom apartment in Glendale, Arizona. We were both 26 years old, broke, and caught in the never-ending cycle of "we'll figure it out next month." My feet hurt when I got home from a double shift one evening. I noticed Jess watching a true crime program while nestled under a blanket on the couch. It made her giggle. "Girl, you look like death," she exclaimed. I said, "I feel like death," and threw my apron to the ground. She put the program on hold. You know what? Do you require the care of a wealthy elderly man? I gave an eye roll. What? Similar to a sugar daddy. Just like that. She smiled. There is no shame in the game. All these guys want is a conversation partner, dinner, sometimes more, depending on your desires. 4 months. My friend Lexi has been doing it. It's easy money, they say. I dismissed it with a giggle. I did, however, look it up that night while I was lying in bed and gazing at my broken phone screen. Lux Date was the name of the app. Where generosity meets connection was the tagline. I have no idea why I did that. Desperation, curiosity, or perhaps both. I created a profile, included a couple of modestly revealing images, and stated that I was seeking an adult who appreciates intelligent talk and coffee. I received messages in less than a day. Some were downright repulsive, but the majority were eerie. However, one was very noticeable. Henry Tate was his name. The dude on his profile photo with salt and pepper hair, a tidy beard, and gentle eyes. He was in his late 40s or early 50s. He was enjoying a cup of espresso at an outdoor cafe while wearing a grey suit. His message was straightforward. Hello, Emma. I appreciate your candor. You appear sincere. I'd love to go with you for just a chat over dinner sometime. There is no pressure. I kept returning to read it even though I didn't respond for several hours. Hello, Henry, I murmured at last. It sounds good to have dinner. Maybe Friday, but I work a lot. He answered almost immediately. It's Friday. I'll reserve a spot. Are you an Italian fan? Friday arrived sooner than I had anticipated. 3 times I came close to canceling, but he was shockingly normal charming even when I met him at a small Italian restaurant in Scottsdale. He got to his feet. When you must be Emma, I replied with a bright smile as I entered. In person, you look even more stunning. He was courteous, perceptive, and the type of man who paid attention to what you had to say. He told me that he had recently gone through a lonely divorce, worked in real estate development, and traveled frequently for work. During supper, he declared, I'm not looking for anything complicated, just friendship, someone to confide in, someone who values openness. Before I departed, he gave me an envelope and paid for everything, including a $200 lunch. Softly, just for your time, he whispered. There was $400 in it. I was taken aback. Jess was waiting on the couch like a gossip journalist when I arrived home. How did that go? Then, I had to admit, he was nice, courteous, didn't even attempt something unusual. He also gave me $400. She almost choked. Girl, what the devil? You're at fault. Profession. I chuckled. However, I had a thought in the back of my head. There was a small voice that said it was too good to be true. I saw Henry 3 more times in the following month. Drinks, dinner, and a quick excursion to a winery outside of Phoenix. Every time he behaved like a gentleman. He would inquire about my day, listen to me complain about my job, and occasionally just discuss music and books. He told me about his upbringing in Vermont and his late father, who instilled in him the value of interpersonal skills. He simply grinned when I asked what that meant. He was, let's say, a good reader. Before they spoke, people knew what they wanted. It felt strange, but I laughed it off. Little things then began to occur. I once discovered a little arrangement of white roses on my porch after returning from work one evening. Not a word. However, Henry almost immediately responded, maybe, when I joked that he might be the hidden admirer in a text message. You deserve to return home to a lovely place. I had only given him the approximate region of my address, not the precise one. He sent a wink emoji when asked how he knew. Sweet or creepy? When I told Jess, she inquired. I said, I'm not sure. My phone gave me a gentle ding when I woke up a week later. Henry had sent the text. Emma, good morning. You look good in that blue hoodie. I went cold. At that moment, I was indeed wearing my blue hoodie. I'm sitting in my kitchen eating breakfast, looking messy and without makeup. Are you outside my apartment? I asked. No response. Reaching the window, I peered through the blinds. I didn't identify any cars. Nobody is outdoors. It might have been a guess, Perhaps he saw me wearing it the last time. The subsequent text, however, chilled me to the bone. Be not afraid. Last night, I just wanted to make sure you arrived home safely. I then gave Jess a call. I paced and muttered, "He's watching me. He's watching me. I swear to God. I should block him," she said. I did, but the texts continued to arrive from various numbers, all of which said something like, "Don't ignore me. All I'm doing is watching out for you. Emma, there is a link between us." I updated my phone number. I even stopped trying, but he persisted. When I got home from work 3 nights later, I realized something wasn't right. The apartment's lights were dimmer than normal. Jess was still away from home. As soon as I secured the door, I detected a subtle hint of pricey cologne. The cologne of Henry. My heart fell. With my phone in hand, I walked cautiously toward the living room, prepared to dial 911. It was as if someone was holding their breath close by. "Hey Jess," I muttered. No response. I looked in the kitchen. Empty. Next, the restroom. Nothing. I discovered my bedroom door was ajar when I got there. My instinct told me to stay out of there. However, I did. My vanity mirror, and something engraved into the wood frame above it caught my attention right once. A sweeter sign. I went cold. It was too late when I heard him. A hand clamped over my mouth after a gentle shuffle behind me. "Shh." In my ear, a voice whispered, "Be calm, known. I shouldn't have been blocked by you." I screamed and scratched at his arm. He clenched his fingers. The scent of his perfume and the warmth of his breath were identical to mine. He whispered, "Henry, Emma, you touched me in some way. Don't damage that." I gave his foot a strong stamp and briefly slipped away. Screaming Jess's name and fumbling for the door latch, I dashed into the hallway. Once more, he seized me and pulled me back toward the bedroom. "Cease fighting," he growled. "I don't understand. For you, I relocated here." I shouted, kicked, and clawed his face. I could accomplish anything. After striking him with the lamp on the side table, I ran barefoot out the door and into the parking lot. When I knocked on the neighbor's door, someone answered. "Call the cops," I shouted. "My apartment is where he is." Henry was gone by the time the police showed up. I opened all the drawers in my room. He had combed through my old writings, makeup, and outfits. On his phone, they discovered pictures of me, some of which were obviously taken from outside my window. He wasn't even divorced. It turns out, Henry Tate was not even his given name. In 2 other states, he had been under investigation for stalking women he met online. His true identity was Brian Keller. One was missing. 2 weeks later, I moved out. I broke the lease with Jess, and we never looked back. I still get up at 3 in the morning on some evenings, convinced that there is a person present. I suppose I smell like cologne sometimes, woody, costly, and sharp. According to the police, he is being held until trial. However, I still get that same intense anxiety that he's still watching, like if he never left. Whenever my phone lights up at night or I see his reflection in the glass, and occasionally I swear I see him as I pass a restaurant or flower store. He's older, icier, and still has that same gentle grin. The one that appeared innocuous. The one who tricked me. "Sweet like sign," said the one. "The one who tricked me. Sweet like sign," said the one. When I initially moved to Elmswood, a small community on the outskirts of the metropolis, I was 26, even though it was close to downtown. It felt like a completely different universe. Trees that appeared to have stood there for ages, rows of small houses, and large yards. The nights were quiet enough that you could hear your own thoughts a bit too clearly. The streets were motionless, and the air was pure. I had recently ended a protracted, emotionally taxing relationship. I wasted 3 years with someone who only left me with rent and the feeling that my greatest years had been wasted. Sometimes you have to start over where nobody knows your name, my mother used to remark. So I did just that. A new beginning, a new home, and a new town. However, I was broke from paying my expenses, taking out student loans, and attempting to repair the small house I had purchased. I was barely making ends meet. I made the foolish choice to register for Sugar Connect at that point. To be honest, I didn't boast about it. At one point, some of my co-workers made a joke about how you might get compensated for simply eating dinner. Curiosity overcame my suspicion that it was probably shady. I created a profile, just Mara, a 26-year-old newcomer to the area, enjoys peaceful evenings and coffee. I left out my last name altogether. A day later, I received a message from Roy. According to his profile, he was a local business consultant who was 52 years old. His message was brief and courteous. "Hello, Mara. Elmswood is not far from where I reside. You seem like a sweetheart. Do you want to get together this week for dinner?" I thought he wasn't some creep because of the tom-com, respectful and non-pushy. He was a tall, grain-brown man with a plain flannel shirt in his photo. He felt safer, to be honest, because he didn't appear wealthy or ostentatious. For a few days, we messaged each other. He told me that he was a recluse who had only been married once and had no children. He claimed that all he wanted was company. Nothing spectacular. I informed him that I had just moved and knew no one. "Not yet." "Well, that's perfect then," he said. I understand how isolating Elmswood may seem. I was struck by that line. He was aware of the type of silence I was referring about. We decided to get together at Maple, a neighborhood cafe in Maine. It was open late and had good lighting next to the petrol station, primarily residents and truckers. I arrived at 6:30 feeling extremely anxious and regretting every choice I had made. When I entered, Roy was already seated in a booth in the corner. He got up, shook my hand, and grinned. "Hey," he remarked kindly. "You must be Mara. You look even more beautiful than you appear in your photo." He sounded genuine, simply quiet and a touch bashful. "Thank you," I said. "You're exactly on schedule." "Old habits," he said. I was taught that by the army years ago. Just by himself, he didn't appear dangerous. We discussed trivia while ordering hamburgers, the best coffee in town, the pleasant weather, and the leisurely pace of the town. He wouldn't let me touch the check when it arrived. "Not this evening. You're invited. Would you want to come by for dinner sometime this week?" he said before I left. "I'm an excellent roast chicken cook." His tone wasn't flirtatious, yet I still hesitated. It was warm, almost paternal. I concurred. His home was nestled among towering trees a few blocks away from mine. He texted me the address and said, "I'll cook on Friday at 7 o'clock. Friday night arrived sooner than I had hoped. The street lights were dark, and the air was cold. I was struck by how silent his house was as I approached it. There was something about the silence that pressed against me. But that was not unusual for Elmswood. The light on the porch flickered. The front door was ajar a little. Still, I knocked. "Come in, Mara," he said from within, his voice resonating as if the space were deserted. As soon as I entered, I noted that there was only the hum of a refrigerator and no cooking noise or food fragrance. A clock ticking faintly, with its stark walls and outdated furniture. The living room appeared overly tidy. No pictures of friends or relatives. "Roy," I called. "Kitchen," was his response. I did what the voice said. With the exception of a single tiny lamp on the counter, the kitchen was completely dark. There was nothing but empty space, no supper, no table set. My stomach grew constricted. "Where's your famous roast chicken?" He chuckled when I made a lame joke, but it didn't sound the same. Slower, deeper, from somewhere behind me, he murmured. I changed my mind. Instead, I thought we could simply talk. I pivoted. His hands were in his pockets as he stood in the doorway, staring at me. There was something strange about him. The diner had lost its warmth. Sure, I responded, taking a small step back. "Perhaps we could go somewhere for coffee instead." "I was unaware that you weren't cooking." "No," he muttered. "There's no reason to travel. This place is silent. We are not bothered by anyone." I had a dry throat after that last section. I suppressed a little chuckle. "In fact, I ought to go shortly. My friend is awaiting my arrival." He grinned too broadly. "Remember how you told me you didn't know anyone here?" My heart fell. He recalled. I did my best to remain composed, right? Since then, though, I've met a few people. He remained still, simply observed me. You look anxious, he replied. You are not required to be. I turned to look at the front door, but it was now shut. It didn't sound close to me. I said cautiously, Roy, I believe I will go. He moved in closer. Mara, do you not trust me? I informed you. All I wanted was company. Yes, but he interrupted me. You are aware of everything I detest about that web page. His voice trembled a little as he spoke. People only want money, even though they act as though they're looking for a connection. I desired something genuine. His use of the word real chilled me to the bone. I took a sidestep in the direction of the hallway. Listen, Roy, it wasn't my intention. He blocked my route, moving faster than I thought he would. His face shifted. His mouth twitched and his eyes widened, as if he was having trouble remaining composed. Please, he uttered almost in a whisper, just remain for a bit. The kitchen counter was touched by my hand. His automobile keys were on a keychain with the words maybe. I took hold of them and gave him a forceful shove that caused him to trip. I took off running. His voice was deep and twisted as he yelled my name. Mara. It was locked at the front door. His footsteps hammered behind me as I struggled with the deadbolt. I opened it in time to run down the street barefoot. I didn't turn around. I contacted the police and closed all the doors when I eventually arrived home. Within 15 minutes, they had reached Roy's house, but it was deserted. It was deserted, as if no one had been there 4 months. After looking over the property records, the officer returned with an odd expression. The house has been empty for about a year, he remarked. Ma'am, last November, the owner passed away. I went cold. No, it isn't feasible. I was merely present. I was invited by him. However, nothing was present. Other than what appeared to be abandoned rubbish, there was no furniture. They discovered a couple women's purses, some partially consumed food, and a mattress in the basement. Others, not mine. According to the police, it appeared that someone had been squatting there, possibly under false pretenses. Gary Henn, Roy's real name, was a vagrant who was wanted in 3 states for assault. Before they could capture him, he vanished. A month later, I left Elmswood, blocked all unfamiliar numbers, and erased all dating apps. I still occasionally receive emails with messages, like I can make dinner this time, or you still in town, sweetheart, from accounts without any profile pictures. I don't respond. I simply remove them, hoping that someone would catch him before he finds another girl to connect with. At all the wrong places. He finds another girl to connect with. At all the wrong places. It always seemed fascinating to me to move to a new city in your late 20s. A new beginning, new people, new habits, a blank canvas. And it was for a time. I had recently moved to Portland, Oregon, to work in marketing. The sense of independence was everything I'd desired following my separation with Nate. Even though the income wasn't spectacular, we had spent almost 5 years together, and it ended in a terrible way. The neighbors heard us, so we yelled, cried, and the police knocked on the door. He didn't hit me, but he did throw a chair, break a lamp, and say words that stuck in my head long after he was gone. So I vowed to stay out of relationships for as long as possible. When I finally packed my things and drove my rusted Honda to Portland, there wasn't much in my new apartment. It was a modest brown brick building with 1 bedroom on the 3rd level. It was mine, but there were 6 flats in all, and the rickety stairs reverberated with each step. Sitting cross-legged on the floor with Chinese takeaway cardboard boxes surrounding me, I can still clearly recall that first night. As I watched the rain run down the window, I thought, I did it. In fact, I started afresh. It was quiet for the first several weeks, mostly through coffee breaks and after work beverages. I became acquaintances with a few co-workers, but my social life was essentially non-existent due to my long work hours and poor energy. But I didn't mind. I enjoyed getting home, changing into my pajamas, and then lying in bed and browsing through my phone until I fell asleep. On my phone, that's actually where it all began. I was lying in bed with the light from my screen filling the room. It was late, perhaps almost midnight. A few weeks prior, I had downloaded this sugar dating app primarily out of curiosity. Rachel, a colleague of mine, was often talking about how finding someone who was willing to pay your rent was simple if you simply played nice. I told myself that I had no intention of meeting anyone. However, I matched with a guy named Eric D that evening. Surprisingly, his profile picture was ordinary. In a classy restaurant, a man in his 40s with clean-cut, salt and pepper hair and a collared shirt. Professional investor, new to the area, looking for good company. The bio stated, "I'll make your time worthwhile." Sure, it was corny, but it was innocuous. We struck up a conversation. Unlike most males on that app, he didn't seem like himself. Just like conversation. No demands, no offensive pickup lines. What I did for a living, where I was from, and what I enjoyed about the city. He claimed to have been divorced for a few years and to have taken many business trips. He spoke in a soothing, mature, and serene tone. I ended up responding more than I intended to. "Eric, you seem grounded," he once sent. "Unlike other people on this site." That's nice. Me, I have no idea what I'm doing on this site. To be honest, I'm laughing. That's all right, Eric. Nor am I. It's true that sometimes all you desire is a connection. That's exactly what I wanted. So that sentence really resonated with me. Just someone who looked at me and saw me. Not the money or even the attention. We started messaging every day by the end of the week. I would ordinarily find it annoying when he called me sweetheart and youngster. But strangely, it didn't work with him. He stated that he wanted to meet me in person and take me out to a casual supper. I nearly said no, but loneliness has strange effects. The next Friday, we got together in a downtown Italian restaurant that was quiet. I arrived early because I was too anxious to eat. I recognized him right away when he entered. He was tall, had a dark coat that looked expensive, and had some grey around his temples. Upon seeing me, he grinned, and the way some men fill a room, his presence filled it. "Leia," he whispered in a low, smooth voice. "That's me," I said, stumbling to my feet. After removing my chair, he took a seat across from me. "Your photos don't do you justice." Flustered, I smiled. "Regards, you're not too horrible either." It was an easy talk. He exuded confidence without being cocky, and he was pleasant without being overbearing. I found out that he divided his time between Portland and Seattle, worked in investments, and owned a few rental homes. I was astonished when he inquired about my job, my move, and my ex. I didn't typically divulge private information, but there was something about his composed demeanor that gave me the confidence to do so. "I really like talking to you, Leia," he added, reaching across the table as dessert arrived. "I believe we could support one another, help each other out," was the code for sugar dating. However, the way he phrased it, it seemed more like an offer than a transaction. That evening, we just said our goodbyes with a long embrace, but as soon as I came home, he texted me. "I made it safely home, my love." He responded back, "Had a good time," to which I replied, "Yeah, thanks for dinner, all right. You're worthy of nice things, rest well." For longer than I'd like to confess, I gazed at the message. We continued to see each other throughout the ensuing weeks, at his Pearl District condo, once for coffee, once for dinner. Although it appeared as though someone lived there in pristine condition, he claimed that it was one of his investments. There is little furniture and a little fragrance and cedar scent. After we met, he usually gave me something, whether it was a tiny present like jewelry or perfume, or an envelope containing several $100s. I secretly knew what it was, but I persuaded myself it was just a kind gesture. I didn't feel used, though. If anything, I felt wanted and seen once more before things began to shift. At first, it was a minor matter. He started to inquire further. "What time do you typically leave work? When do you usually go to sleep? Who's in your neighborhood?" I would dismiss them with a laugh, claiming he was being overly protective, but his tone became more direct and icy. He contacted me one evening while I was watching TV at home. "Hey," I said, "you're late with your call. I just had you on my mind." "That's sweet," he answered. "Are you by yourself at the moment?" I paused. Yes, but why? Excellent. Tonight. Keep the door locked. I chuckled uneasily. Why? What's happening? He hesitated. Nothing. Simply do it. He hung up after that. I couldn't sleep that night for the first time. He didn't text at all the following day or the day after that. He seemed to have disappeared. No calls. No messages. You okay? I texted at last. It failed to deliver. I thought he had blocked me. I attempted to brush it off, but it hurt. Everyone is ghosted. The moment, however, a week or so later, I began to notice strange things around my flat. Someone had adjusted my doormat a little. One evening, my key felt loose in the lock. The hallway light outside my door flickered twice when I got home. Despite the fact that the building's other lights were working properly, I was just being paranoid, I assured myself. Until 6 a.m. one morning, someone knocked on my door. Groggy and annoyed, I pulled myself out of bed, assuming it was maintenance or a package. However, my heart stopped a beat when I noticed it was Eric through the peephole. As always, he was composed, well-groomed, and had a small smile on his face. But this time he had neither coffee nor flowers in his hands. He had nothing in his hands. I slightly opened the door. What are you doing here, Eric? He whispered. Good morning, sweetheart. I was nearby. I wanted to surprise you. 6 o'clock, I said, half laughing. In the morning. I was afraid of you. His head cocked slightly. My messages went unanswered by you. I was concerned. I frowned and added, I didn't get any. Remember how you blocked me? For a time, his smile vanished. Then it returned. But it missed his eyes this time. There must have been a bug. He didn't move when I told him I had to get ready for work. Simply remained there, gazing at me with the same unreadable expression. Then he remarked, This evening, you ought to stop by my apartment. Let's chat. Tonight, I am unable to. With haste, I answered. I have things to do. He turned and moved slowly and deliberately down the corridor without responding. After a long moment of standing motionless, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. I made sure the windows were closed, the curtains were drawn, and the door was double locked that evening. I attempted to relax by watching something humorous, but every little noise made I leap. At midnight, I eventually fell asleep. My phone was vibrating on the nightstand when I woke up at around 2:30 a.m. The number was unidentified. I answered, half sleeping. Hi there, quiet. Then a little breathing. Eric, I said softly. It clicked off the line. That was the last time I slept. I told Rachel about it at work the following day. Girl, you really need to block him and perhaps file a report, she remarked with a scowl. It's messed up. I came home that evening to find a message beneath my door. Despite my pledge that I would, it was written by hand. You promised to stop by tonight. I waited. Never again lied to me. My knees almost buckled. It had crisp, almost exquisite penmanship. I informed the building manager, Mrs. Larkin, an elderly woman, that I believed someone had entered my floor right away. She said she will review the surveillance footage. She gave me a call back the following morning. The only thing captured on camera from last night, honey, is you leaving and returning home. No one else ascended the steps. I recognized then that he had a key somehow. I kept the lamp on that night, positioned a chair beneath my doorknob, and watched the door all night. Nothing took place. However, I heard faint footsteps in the hallway outside at 5 in the morning, one by one, slow and methodical, all the way to M. One by one, slow and methodical, all the way to M. When I first met him, I was 26. It's odd how natural everything initially seemed. How a few amicable messages on a screen led to the beginning of something that would come to define one of the darkest times of my life. I occupied a little apartment outside of Cleveland at the time. It was mine, even though it didn't have fancy beige carpet, off-white walls, or a rattling air conditioner that occasionally smelt like burnt dust when it turned on. And that felt like something after years of switching between shady sublets and housemates from college. The finances were tight. I worked the nighttime shift at a nearby cafe, and grounded Grace, where a cappuccino with oat milk and lavender syrup cost $6. Most of the patrons were freelancers or college students who felt they were too hip for Starbucks. It didn't bother me. My boss, Renee, was gracious enough to allow me to take leftovers home at the end of the night. And the work was simple. I was still barely making ends meet between my student loan payments, rent, and petrol. Whenever we were broke, my friend Lauren and I would make jokes about obtaining a sugar daddy, giggling over inexpensive wine. However, it was always a joke. It wasn't until one night, I had just finished my shift on a slow Tuesday. An advertisement for a website called Date Comfort appeared when I was browsing Instagram. It was not one of those overt sugar daddy sites. It appeared more like a respectable dating service for successful men and aspirational women. In fact, I recall stating out, "Yeah, right." I was on the verge of swiping away, but something stopped me. Exhaustion combined with curiosity might be deadly. I therefore created a profile, not too crazy. A few selfies taken by people my age, that I was a coffee shop employee, that I enjoyed watching old movies and trekking. I had messages within an hour. The majority were as expected. "Hello, beautiful. I'm looking for a good time tonight," or offers that made me scoff. Then there was Andrew, though. He had short brown hair, graying temples, an expensive-looking watch, a courteous smile, and a profile picture that looked like it belonged in a real estate brochure. He was in his early 40s, investor, widowed, seeking companionship and conversation. Read his bio. Not a drama. He was the first to message me. "You have a good face, Andrew. It reminds me of a former acquaintance." It was straightforward, almost charming. I said, "Me," after hesitating for a while, in a positive way, hopefully. "Yes, Andrew, you appear sincere. Here. That is uncommon." That night, we had a brief conversation. He told me that he traveled frequently for work, and that he worked in real estate development. He claimed that all he wanted was company and someone to hang out with while he was in town. Nothing more. It sounded innocuous. He proposed to grab coffee at the end of the week, half expecting Lauren to talk me out of it. I told her. Instead, she asked, "Girl, why don't you just meet in public? If he's wealthy and not creepy, he might settle your student loan debt." We chuckled, but I was secretly anxious and intrigued. We first met at Harbour House Cafe, a classy establishment featuring marble worktops and tiny glass containers filled with sugar cubes. I became even more nervous because he looked just like his picture. In person, most males who appeared good online looked a little worse. He didn't. When I stepped in, he stood up, grinned, and said, "You must be Emily." In my memory, he spoke in a cool, collected tone that people adopt when they are accustomed to being heard. We had a simple talk. He posed genuine inquiries rather than superficial ones. He inquired about my family, my upbringing, and my objectives. He told me about his wife's passing 3 years prior, how they never had children, and how the house now felt too large and too silent. "Money should never make someone like you feel small," he stated quietly when I confided in him about my difficulties repaying my loans. I felt noticed because of the way he said it, not in a flirtatious or pathetic way. "Let me take you to dinner next week," he remarked at the conclusion of the date. "A real meal. My reward." "Yes," I said. That was the beginning. In the upcoming weeks, we visited upscale dining establishments that I could never afford on my own. He was never demanding, but he always insisted on paying. It wasn't until our third dinner that he even attempted to kiss me. Even yet, it was only a fleeting, cautious moment outside my car. He gave me a sense of security. At first, it didn't feel like a transaction when he began sending me money. "You work too hard, sweetheart," he would say. "Allow me to handle that bill for you. Don't be stubborn," he would reply, laughing when I objected. I enjoy doing it. He soon began giving me rent as a present. He would give me money to buy groceries. Additionally, he occasionally surprised me with new phones or fancy bags. I reassured myself that it was okay, that he was simply giving, that I wasn't being dishonest, and that it wasn't what it appeared to be. However, I knew in my heart that I was going too far. Approximately 2 months later, I spent my first night at his residence. It was next to an old golf course on the outskirts of town. The mansion was enormous, like enormous in a movie. Large windows, polished floors, and pricey artwork I couldn't identify. It seemed antiseptic, as if no one lived there. We watched a movie in his living room while he prepared dinner, spaghetti, and wine. I eventually fell asleep, and when I awoke, he was observing me from a chair across from the couch. "Groggy," I said. "Are you all right?" His smile was a bit too slow. "You speak while you're asleep." "I do." I chuckled uneasily. "What do I say?" "A matter about your brother. You urging him to stop," he said. "Who is your brother?" I got a strange cold from it. "He's in Oregon." "Josh." "Why?" He took a while to respond. "Simply put, I appreciate how close you are to your family." After giving me a forehead kiss, he switched off the lights. Something about the way he said it resonated with me, even though I convinced myself it was nothing. 1 week later, he became possessive. He would contact me and say things like, "Andrew, busy night or just forgot about me?" "Andrew." If I didn't respond to him within a few hours, I get anxious when I don't hear from you, you know. It was enough to give me anxiety, but not continual. He appeared to the cafe one evening after I informed him that I couldn't meet him since I was covering someone else's shift. I had no idea that he was aware of my workplace. He spent the whole time watching me and drinking coffee at a corner table. Upon the conclusion of my shift, he said, "I wanted to surprise you." I made an effort to grin. "You did?" With a tight grip, he grabbed for my hand. "When you keep things from me, I don't like it. I have nothing to conceal. So why didn't you let me know where you were employed?" I chuckled uncomfortably. It simply never came up. There was nothing more from him. Simply nodded, paid his bill, and silently escorted me to my vehicle. My stomach was in knots as I laid in bed that night, reliving the entire exchange. After then, things progressively became worse, like a temperature increasing so slowly that you don't notice you're burning until it's too late. He began making nightly calls. If I didn't take a call, he would leave lengthy voicemails. In the middle of his sentence, his tone changed from being gentle to icy. Then little items started to vanish from my residence. A sweatshirt, a mug, and a framed picture of Lauren and me. Before I discovered a tiny package on my kitchen counter one evening, I felt I was going crazy. Those were the same things inside. A note was present. "My dear, you should not leave your door unlocked. You could be harmed." Fortunately, I was alone. I could hardly grasp the page since my hands were shaking so much. In a panic, I called Lauren, but she advised me to call the police instead. I didn't. I was afraid, but also embarrassed because I knew in my heart that I had allowed him in. I had taken his money and gifts. How could I tell the police that without coming out as complicit? I blocked his number and changed my locks as a result. I didn't hear anything for a week. Perhaps it was over, I thought. Then, at around 2 in the morning, I heard my door handle turning and woke up. A little metallic click was all that was needed to startle me awake. I listened and froze. Then it came to me once more. A slow, methodical rattling. I sat up and muttered something. "Who is present?" No response. I could hear my heart thumping so loudly in my ears. I reached for my phone, prepared to dial 911. I became aware of the glow beneath my door at that moment. A flashlight was being used. "Leave." I let out a yell. The light went off. For an instant, nothing moved. Then I heard footsteps moving back down the corridor. I made a police call. Within 10 minutes, they were there, but I didn't have to guess who it was. Scratches were present on the no-forced entrance, but a lock. "Anyone you think might want to scare you?" queried one of the officers, a man named Rogers. I paused. "Perhaps my former partner. He has been appearing." "Do you know his entire name?" I said. "Andrew Miller." He scribbled it down and nodded. However, nothing was found when they ran his name. No record, no address, and not even an Ohio driver's license. He seemed to be non-existent. I looked at my phone the following morning. Numerous texts from unidentified numbers were included. Calling the police wasn't necessary. I was humiliated by you. I'm being transformed by you into something I'm not at all. I pardon you. Next, a picture of me dozing off in my bed. I shrieked and dropped the phone. That day, I told my manager I needed time off, packed my bags, and drove 3 hours south to stay with my cousin. Lauren assisted me in. About 8 months ago, I relocated back to Clearwater, Ohio. It's a small village with peaceful streets, 2 taverns, a grocery store, and a diner that, like 1985, still closes at 8:30. My mom's health began to deteriorate, so I returned. Nothing significant, just the typical aging process. However, mother is extremely stubborn, and I am the only child, so I assumed that being close by would allay our concerns. Above a florist store on Lincoln Avenue, I discovered this tiny 1-bedroom apartment. It's the kind of place with inexpensive rent, a small balcony that looks out over Main Street, and walls thin enough to hear your neighbor sneeze. For a time at least, it felt secure, reassuring, even. Rachel Monroe is my name. My age is 31, and I would have laughed if you had told me last year that I would almost go crazy over a man I had never even met in person. 6 months later, though, I still jump when my phone rings and check my hair twice before bed. It began rather innocuously. One evening, while enjoying some leftover pizza on the couch, I was browsing Instagram when an advertisement appeared. Locate a mentor in your area. Real relationships, sincere advice, security, and privacy. The application was referred to as sugar meat. The term may sound shady, but the advertisement wasn't particularly obscene or explicit. It presented itself as a forum for financial mentoring. Older professionals might assist women establish themselves, launch businesses, and give them guidance. In exchange, they would receive companionship, not intimacy, just presence. I was barely making ends meet at that point. My savings were disappearing due to rent, gas for my bi-weekly trips to see my mom, and her prescription drugs. What the hell, I thought. I might actually meet someone decent. Perhaps I would receive guidance, some encouragement, or at least a stimulating discussion. I met Mark Reynolds that way. He sent me a note within 1 day. His profile photo appeared to be from a business website. A crisp suit, salt and pepper hair, and a kind grin. Claimed to be 55, semi-retired, and a Columbus resident who frequently traveled for consulting. Our initial conversation was civil. Rachel, you have a kind heart. Mark, nowadays, most individuals don't smile that way. Me, I make an effort. I don't have to cry over my student loans. Oh, Mark, you have a sense of humor. That's nice. Someone should be on your side because you deserve it. He claimed to have been divorced for 10 years, to have grown children that he seldom ever saw, and wanted his week to be a little lighter. He didn't immediately discuss money or sex. He simply listened. After the first few weeks, it was reassuring to talk to someone who was older and wiser. After 3 weeks of messaging, he offered to provide me with financial support. It's obvious that you work hard, Mark. That's nice. What if I made your life a bit simpler? $500 per week. Simply company. No conditions. I paused. It sounded too wonderful to be true. Yet he never improperly flirted or asked for pictures. He just mentioned that he enjoyed messaging me to hear about my day, my mom, and the minor annoyances. I gave him my Venmo after some persuasion, and on Friday night, $500 appeared in my account as planned. The following week and the week after that, in the night, he would text me, "Did you have dinner tonight, Mark?" Me, "Chinese leftovers." Next time, Mark, order something nice. Better than reheated lane is what you deserve. I would occasionally forget that he was a stranger. He had extensive knowledge of my life, including my mother Helen's name, her medical conditions, and even the hospital where she had been admitted the previous year following a mild stroke. I thought I had mentioned it to him in passing, but now I realize I never specified which hospital. Spending a night in, he called me for the first time in February. He spoke in a kind yet thoughtful tone, as if each word had been carefully chosen. "You sound so worn out, Mark, my dear." Me. "It was merely a long workday. You need more sleep, Mark. I'm concerned about you." His use of the word sweetheart stayed with me, for some reason. It was not romantic, as if he had been saying it for years. It was possessive. 2 weeks or so later, he began requesting minor favors, strangely specific, but nothing concerning. "Could you email me a picture of your balcony, Mark? I'd want to picture you there." "What's the name of the diner you frequent, Mark? If I'm ever in Clearwater, I might drop by." He would retreat when I was hesitant to divulge specifics. "Always kind, always sorry, Mark, Rachel. I didn't mean to bother you. I simply enjoy knowing where you are. Makes me feel intimate." The date was March 9th. It snowed that night, so I can recall only a little dusting. In addition, my mother had called earlier to ask if I might come fix her TV tomorrow. Approximately 9:20 p.m. my phone rang. It was a local number. "Not sure." "Hello," I said. A woman who sounded composed and professional said, "Hello, is this Rachel Monroe?" "From Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling. Following a fall, your mother has been admitted. She's asking for you while she's awake." My heart fell. "Oh my God, is she okay?" I inquired. "She's stable, but she hit her head." "Will you arrive soon?" She provided me with the precise hospital address, my mother's entire name, and even the name of her blood pressure medication. Everything seemed fine. I didn't hesitate. I hurried out after grabbing my keys and coat. The door wasn't even locked. It took 22 minutes to drive to Mercy General. I parked unevenly, hurried inside. At the reception desk, I blurted out my mother's name. From her computer, the nurse raised her head. "There isn't nobody here with that name, ma'am." "There must be. I received a call just now." She checked again. "Nothing. You might want to call your mom," she added gently. It might have been a different hospital. With trembling hands, I went outside and dialed my mother's landline. Her response was groggy. "What's wrong, Mom? Rachel. Have you fallen?" "What? No. I was asleep." "Why?" It hit me like icy water at that point. I had been enticed out of my flat by someone. I drove home. The journey back seemed to go on forever. My gut twisted completely. Upon entering my driveway, the door seemed precisely as I had left the lights off and it closed. However, as soon as I entered, I realized that drawers were open. My laptop, TV, and jewelry box that my father had given me before he died were all gone. And worse, my framed family portraits were empty. The frames remained, but the pictures were gone. The cupboard in my bathroom was raided as well. No prescription bottles were found. The floor was littered with vitamins. It was more than thievery. It was intimate. I made a 911 call right away. I told the officers everything when they came. They inquired about the phone call, made notes, and dusted 4 prints. Sanders, a younger police officer, appeared uncomfortable. "You mentioned that they were aware of your mother's name and surgery, Officer Sanders." Me, "Yes, everything, even her medications." Sanders, "Officer, that's strange. Quick cash wasn't what they were after. They had other desires, perhaps identity theft. However, why take the pictures? Why were the prescriptions written?" That night, I didn't get any sleep. Or a few days later, I received a ping from my bank app. Mark Reynolds transferred $500. I hadn't spoken to him since the break-in, but it was the same as usual. The conversation log was deleted when I sent him a message on Sugarmeat. His account was deleted. I attempted to email the app's support staff. According to them, the individual asked for all data to be deleted. There is no trace left. And then I saw something relaxing. His former phone number's first 6 numbers matched the phony hospital number that contacted me. I'm not sure how he obtained my mother's medical records, but I believe he had been looking for months. He took notes whenever I brought her up, possibly compared and contrasted public datasets, perhaps even faked local numbers to appear authentic. The unregistered call, which was most likely a burner, was tracked down by the authorities. I started double-checking everything, changed my locks, and put a Ring camera above the door, but I still felt like I was being watched. At 3 a.m., I occasionally heard a faint knock that was followed by 3 gentle knocks, and then stillness. According to my mother, she was once phoned and asked if she was Rachel's mother. She scowled when I inquired what they stated. He just stated he was proud, Mom, of you, that you fulfilled all of his dreams. Then hung up. 4 months have passed since then. Since then, nothing. I still check the webcam stream before going to bed every night. The motion warning occasionally sounds at midnight, indicating just the silhouette of a moving vehicle, or perhaps no car at all. There are moments when I believe I see the dim figure of a person waiting across the street, just outside the street lamp's illumination. I know this, but I'm not sure if it's him or someone else. Whoever it was is still out there, and knew everything about me before I even heard their voice. I never considered myself to be the type of guy who would ever get caught up in something like that. The entire issue of sugar daddies. I mean, I'm 31 years old. I work from Phoenix as a freelance IT contractor, and I have a rather calm life. I'm an elderly man stuck in a young man's body. My pals joke. I've never been one to pursue relationships. I don't drink much, and I don't go out to clubs. I work, lift, eat, sleep, and so on. However, loneliness began to set in more strongly than I had anticipated following my most recent split. Being by yourself due to your busy schedule is one thing. It's another to spend every night in your apartment alone with your thoughts and the hum of the refrigerator. I didn't consider how out of my league a female from a dating app seemed when she messaged me, because she was younger, gregarious, and amusing. Sierra was her name, or at least that's what she said. We connected via the Lux app. To be honest, I had just downloaded Match as a joke, after seeing advertisements for it on Instagram. It was sold to successful guys with privileged connections. Curiosity overcame me, even though I really didn't feel like one. About 2 a.m, she received her first message. You look like trouble in a hoodie, Sierra. She spoke with an air of confidence that was natural rather than falsely flirtatious, taunting. According to her profile, she was a 24-year-old design student seeking a win-win situation. Her tone didn't sound transactional, but I understood exactly what it meant. It had a human sound. We spoke non-stop for the next couple days. The majority of the individuals on her sugar daddy horror stories were pushy or creepy. She informed me. I informed her that I wasn't like that, which, in retrospect, is probably what all creeps say. A week later, she requested a face-to-face meeting. The eatery she selected was one of those hip rooftop restaurants in the heart of the city where everything is expensive and served in small portions. It felt so pretentious that I nearly bailed. But all of that vanished as soon as I saw her sitting there. She resembled her pictures exactly. Sharp eyes, long dark hair, a denim jacket over a sundress, and a genuine appearance without being overdressed or artificial. Whoa. As I got closer, I recall exclaiming, "You're actually you." Her voice was gentle and disarming as she chuckled. You seem taken aback. The sheer number of filters available would astonish you. I uttered, "Oh, trust me. I've met my share of liars, too. I had a better dinner than I had anticipated." She inquired honestly about my life, career, and mother, whom I continued to assist on occasion after my father's death. She discussed her upbringing in Tucson, her desire to relocate to California, and her hopes of opening a boutique in the future. She made no requests by the time the check arrived. No funds, no plan. She just expressed her want to see me once again. Things became comfortable over the course of the following few weeks. To cozy, Sierra began to visit more frequently, once a week at first, then several consecutive nights. She would cook, watch films, and then collapse on the couch. It wasn't a huge deal, I assured myself. In actuality, though, it began to feel as though we were dating. Nevertheless, some things didn't quite add up. She never discussed her family. She kept her phone on mute all the time. She would occasionally claim to be with a customer and disappear for the entire day. That jealous guy was not who I wanted to be. But I looked her up online one night, because I was so curious. Nothing. No Facebook, Instagram, or school records. There was no sign of a Tucson Sierra who fit her description. Things began to seem odd at that point. The first strange incident occurred on a Thursday evening. I was exhausted after returning home from a job in Mesa. Around 11 p.m., I went to bed, and when I woke up, I could hear someone pacing my living room. Not pacing, not pacing, not pacing, not pacing, not pacing back and forth on the hardwood. I went cold. That night, Sierra wasn't supposed to be there. She informed me that she was lodging with a friend. I picked up my phone, crawled out of bed stealthily, and slipped into the hallway. Faint stripes appeared on the floor as the street lamps light pierced the blinds. "Sia," I said in a whisper. The sound of footsteps ceased. She paused, and then her voice emerged from the shadows. "You shouldn't sneak up like that." I leapt. She stood looking out into the street from the window. "Jesus, you scared me," I murmured. Someone broke in, I thought. She avoided eye contact. Softly, "Someone was here," she said. "However, it's all right. He is now gone." I felt sick to my stomach. "What? Who was present?" Simply said. "Someone who shouldn't be." The expression in her eyes when she eventually turned to face me was difficult to explain. It seemed as though she was resigned rather than afraid. She dismissed my attempt to get further information and went to bed. That night, I hardly slept at all. After 2 days, I became aware of something else. My front door was open when I returned from the gym. I was positive that before I left, I had locked it. Nothing seems to have been stolen inside. However, there was one difference. Face down was the framed picture of my dad and me that I kept on the hallway table. Sierra didn't pick up when I called her right away. She just replied, "Sorry, been busy," when she eventually texted back that evening, "I miss you." No explanation. No reference to the door. She returned that weekend without warning, carrying takeout and behaving as if nothing had happened. Her response surprised me when I challenged her about the door. She seemed truly angry as she asked, "You think I broke in?" "I'm not saying that, but you're the only one with a key." With a sharp exhale, she sat down. "I informed you that I was being followed by someone. Perhaps he came here when I wasn't there, pursuing you. What are you saying about?" Her voice trembled a little as she replied, "You remember I mentioned I had a few bad sugar daddies before. When I quit seeing him, one of them wasn't happy. He has been making appearances." The whole situation sounded like a Lifetime movie, but I still wanted to trust her. "How come you didn't inform me earlier?" "Because," she added, "you'd flip out. Unless something happens, the police don't do underscore when you tell me to go to them." Our argument lasted almost an hour. She vowed not to involve me in it and to manage it herself. "I don't care," I told her. All I wanted was for her to be safe. She stayed over again that evening, and she was gone when I awoke the following morning. Her charger, her clothes, everything as though she had never been there. 3 days went by with no communication. Then, on a Wednesday evening, I heard someone knock on my door. A heavy knock. It was angry and aggressive. I felt sick to my stomach when I peered through the peephole. Sierra wasn't the one. The man was in his mid-30s, bald, and dressed in a rumpled suit. His respiration was irregular, and his face was red. "Can I help you?" Through the door, I inquired. He yelled, "Where is she?" "Who?" "You son of a underscore. Don't be foolish around me. Where is she?" With a pounding heart, I took a step back. "Man, I have no idea who you're referring to." His hand rattled when he smacked it against the door. "Do you think you can conceal her here once more?" "I live here." "Dude, she has no place with you. You are mistaken. Don't tell me lies." For a moment, I believed he was reaching into his jacket pocket, drawing a firearm. He was gone when I looked around after running for my phone. Simply disappeared. 20 minutes later, the police arrived, took my statement, and informed me that they would monitor the area, but were unable to locate anyone who fit his description. They requested Sierra's full name and contact details after I told them about her. I threw myself into them. I had her Lux Match profile and number, but by the next morning, her Completely account was removed. All of the phone logs, photos, and text threads are gone. I received a letter in the mail that Friday. My name was written in sloppy handwriting, and there was no return address. I had never seen a printed photo like the one inside. Sierra and I were seated on my couch, grinning, but the photo showed a different man's hand on her shoulder, and I wasn't wearing the shirt I remembered wearing that evening. That night, no man was present. 4 words were written in sloppy handwriting on the back of the picture. His life is being lived by you. The only way I can explain what transpired after that is that my life began to fall apart. When I was by myself in the house, I would hear footsteps. I set up a security camera, however it would detect motion, but never play anything. I discovered a used coffee mug that wasn't mine in the sink one morning. I put a knife on the nightstand and went to sleep. 2 weeks later was the tipping point. My front door creaked open at around 3 in the morning, waking me up. With my knife in hand, I jumped out of bed and made my way silently to the living room. The television was on, flickering and static on the screen. I could also make out someone seated on the couch in the glow. Sierra was the one. "What the hell are you doing here?" I yelled. Her eyes were dark and unreadable. She slowly turned her head to face me. "I may return," he replied. "Who is she?" whispered. "Who made that statement?" "This dude is a resident." My blood froze. "This is my home, Sierra." She gave a small, almost pathetic grin. He said the same thing. And for a little moment, the lights flickered before I could react. The bald man standing behind her is someone I swear I saw. They were both gone when the lights were turned back on. Naturally, I was not believed by the police. Said that I knew what I saw, but that perhaps I had been having H.